Okay, so getting back to building structures. Welcome back to Stu's Structures. I haven't been here since the spring sometime before when I had to go to work and do more work than play, unfortunately. So I haven't been able to work on these structures in a while, so welcome back. Let's get into this. So welcome back. Like I said, we are here to continue work and finish up the Riverside shops that I had started in the spring. And the basic block of this building, so to speak, is together: the walls, the windows, all that type of thing. But we still have roofs and porches and, detail work. I want to put some stuff in the windows of the storefronts. So we're going to continue on with this build. But to begin with here, what I want to do is, since it's been so long since I started this structure, is just to do some short clips of the process that got me to this point. If you're more interested in seeing how-tos on the early part of this, the other two videos that made up the beginning of this building are back in my playlist. Please go back and watch those if you haven't seen them, or if you just need to refresh your memory because it's been a while. So anyway, here's just a bunch of short clips and a final view of the building to show where we are at this point when we're getting started in the final steps of this building. Now, like all structures, I started with pictures, and I didn't have a lot of pictures of this building. You can see pieces of it in several different photographs that I have of buildings in town. And so to start with, I had to come up with a footprint, and I did use a Sanborn map and, judge the size of this according to how the other station building that I previously built was next to it, and just came up with dimensions. And these were rough to start with, and I did change these as I built the building. But once I had the basic sizes of the walls, I had to come back and figure out where all the doors, windows, and that type of thing was, and put an order into Teachy to get some windows and doors. This front here has corbels at the top of it, so I had to order some corbels as well because I didn't want to hand make all these little corbels. But basically, I just do rough drawings of all the different sides of the building and figure out where everything is going to be and get all my parts in order. The next thing, like all my buildings, I come back and start cutting sides and figuring out the layout of windows and doors. So, I just cut the original sides out to begin with, and this is just basic siding. Wood that's prescribed with the siding boards on it, and then I'll lay out the windows and doors and come back and cut all of those out. And once I make sure everything fits in it the way that it should, I go ahead and put brown paint on the windows and paint the walls, and then I'm going to come back and start gluing all those together. Now this side here, I did have some difficulties with it later, and I'll do some changes. So, we'll go see a couple shots of that here in a little while. Here's the small building that goes on the rear end of the building, and the three walls that will make that up. And here you can see once the structure is painted and the windows are painted and glued into the walls, then I start gluing my wall structures together. And I put some 4x4s in the corners, and the walls you can see here are wanting to warp a little bit from the paint. So I'm going to have to add more interior structure to these to make them a little more sound. And in that back building, I do the same as I did the other building and get it ready and put some supports inside of the building. You can see them in the corners here. And where this attaches to the other two buildings, I put these two long pieces on the back, so it'll give it more area for the glue to adhere to the other building. And then I glue it onto the building, and that's the majority of the biggest part of the block here done. Now the front wall that we haven't started on, I ordered these storefronts from Teachy. I don't really have good pictures of the windows and doors that were there, so I'm not sure what they really were. And basically the top half of the building is laid out like this. It has two different levels to the two different buildings. And once I get everything painted and the windows painted, everything, I come back and start gluing that structure together. The bottom half of it separate from the top half, and then gluing those two together. Then I come through, and the false tops on these that have the corbels on them, I'm just going to start making those structures up. So I figure out the spacing and paint it all, and then go ahead and mount that to the front of the building. And then there's one across that short left-hand side as well. And once I get those on, I decided it was time to go ahead and glue this to the front of the building and complete the major block of the building. Now on that one side, I had mentioned that, something wasn't quite right, and when I started looking at roof lines, I realized I needed to add a little height to this building. So I cut off all those real small window strips at the top of this and came back and added this slightly higher wall on this side. Now this also has a third real small storefront on the left-hand side of the building, so I'm going to come through and cut all the pieces that will make that happen as well. And this doesn't get corbels on the front of it, but once I get all that painted and glued together, I go ahead and add it into the building. So, here's just another shot of it as it is, but like I said, the side walls and everything want to warp a little bit, and I usually over-design things, so I came back and just started adding all of my interior supports to keep the walls from buckling and to keep even space from the two long walls, because they're so long, I don't want them warping and having a bulge in the center of the wall. So I put some of these cross supports in there, put all my window material on the glazing on the inside of the windows. Then I come back and add supports around the outside of the top to where eventually I'm going to have the roof come into this. Now we're just going to do a couple of quick shots here. This is the whole building sitting on the turntable as it is to begin the new section of this build. I'm really looking forward to continuing on with this and getting this done. I like this building. And here's just a kind of a glimpse of the inside bracing and the additions that I had made. Now to get started on this, it's been a while since I've used my workbench, and this is just a mess. So I got to go through and clean my workbench to begin with. And during my time down this year, I was actually able to get some 1, 2, 3 blocks instead of these old lead weights to use for building, which is a good plus for the collection too. Now to start with, we're going to start working on the roof on this and getting bracing in for the roof. So I just put these big pieces up here in place as square stock and mark them to length. And the tops of the ceiling or the roof line were starting to warp out a little bit. So I've got to clamp these to get them to glue. And you can see here I'm using 2 clamps because I don't have the proper size bar clamp to clamp them into place. But I just go through and get the main roof supports in. And then on the back roof, this is an odd roof on this very back part of the building. It's not just one long flat roof. It's got an angle off of one end. So I have to make this angle piece here and add some other bracing in that the roof will connect to against the other part of the building. So once I do that, I go ahead and add one more brace in the middle of that and a brace off the end wall of the other building on this angle piece as well. And where I put this square in the corner, both pieces don't meet up flush to this, so I've got to come back on both edges and just take an X-Acto knife and shave the outer edges of this down a little bit. Now on the top edge of the roof of this, I've got to start putting some bracing in, so I added in a bunch of bracing there, and then onto this small part of the building, I'm going to add a bunch of extra bracing in there as well. And once I get this one big piece on the back wall, then the front of the building where the door is in, I also need to add a little brace in that to support the roof, and I just go ahead and put one in the middle of that whole span too to help support the roof better. Now, originally I was thinking about using this real thin basswood for the roof material, but I'm really short of this, and the roof isn't so, big pieces, so I can use this cardboard instead and save my wood for other projects. So I just come through and I'm going to start to measure the lengths and the widths of all this, and all 3 pieces of this big roof are the same length. So I get my measurement for length on that, cut a big sheet, and then get measurements for each individual roofs. And since this roof sits back up underneath the top roof, I'd cut this one first and then cut the other one so that it overlaps that roof. And then I'm going to come back and cut the one that, is on the other side of that to finish the 3 long pieces up for the main roof. And basically that's all 3 pieces there. Now onto this back roof that I told you, it wasn't just a big flat roof. It has these 2 different angles on this. And I just put the cardboard in place. I measured basic measurements, but then I put it on place. And both pieces I just scored underneath where the wall met it and overhung the edges by a foot. And that's how I just got my measurements to cut these pieces. And this piece for this end wall here, the front isn't perfectly square, so I had to cut a very slight angle to get this one cut with a foot overhang on the front and the side. And that gives me all the pieces of roof that I made for the main part of the building itself. Now the other thing I'm going to go ahead and start doing is the whole building needs trim. So I'm just going to go ahead and start painting a whole bunch of this trim so that I can come back and use it later to get the trim done. So there you have a real quick look at where the building is at. I didn't have a lot of time to work this week, but what I did get done, I wanted to go ahead and at least get this video out there. Hopefully this next week I'll have a little more time. As long as the weather is conducive, I need to be getting stuff done in the nursery. Winter moved in, excuse me, about a month earlier than it has in past years, so I was nowhere near ready for the last 3 snows that we have gotten. I mean, they weren't a lot. One was 5 inches, the other 2 weren't a lot, but the temperatures were extremely cold for this time of year, and just, my old bones can't take it the way I used to. And working in my normal shop that you've seen in my videos, I live in a small log cabin not a log cabin, but a cabin that my dad built back in the woods on our family farm here. And there's 300 and some feet of underground electric cable that feed the electricity to that building. And somewhere in that 300 feet, I have a bad short. So, I don't have electric back out there yet. We're dividing the farm, and I'm going to end up with about 27 acres here for my nursery and my farm business. So eventually I've got to put in some telephone poles and extend the electric lines back to my part of the farm. So, it's not worth me reinvesting in electric wire underground and then having to come through and do that again later on, with another major expense. So anyway, I have extension cords running for, a few hundred feet to my building, and I use limited power in there right now. Electronics don't take that much juice and a few lights, but I really don't do, everything that I used to do in there. So I'm kind of hampered in that respect, but I'm going to struggle on and work on buildings and get some stuff done when I can find the time for not, working in my nursery. My nursery is my priority. That's why I did not have videos up all summer long. And now that the weather's getting bad, even though I'm having to do some stuff outside, I am coming up with a little time to get in the grump shack, is what we call the cabin I live in, and get some work done on these buildings. There's still a good bit to do on this building. I like these shops. I don't have a whole lot of information on them. I know the first store was a general store, and the little tiny shop off of one side, I don't have a clue what that one was. So I've got to make up stuff for the interior, windows of those so you can see that they're stores. This also gets a little front porch off of the 2 main buildings of this, and a small uncovered porch off the small building off to the side. So, there's still a fair amount to do on this building. So I'm going to do it as I can and try to get videos out every week, even if they're maybe short, just to have something out there until I can get back into full swing of things. So stay with me. I do appreciate you being here. For all my new subscribers, thank you for joining my channel, and we'll try to get more material up for you through the winter than we did through the summer, which was zero, so anything is better than that. In any case, thank you again for coming back and sharing this time. Happy Model Railroad.